Welcome to the Bible for Kids podcast with your hosts, best-selling children's author Amy Parker and author and co-creator of VeggieTales, Mike Naraki. If instilling biblical values in kids is important to you, this podcast will help give you the resources, wisdom, and hope to do just that. Now let's join our hosts, Amy and Mike, for this week's episode.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast. I'm Amy Parker.
And I'm Mike Naraki. And today we have back for the second time our friend Art Rainer. He has a new book out specifically geared toward teens and money. So if you have any teens or money, sometimes it's hard to have both because teens are expensive. You're going to want to stay tuned. But first,
we like to start every episode of the Bible for Kids with a Bible verse. And today's verse is ripped right out of Art's book and the Bible, 2 Corinthians 9:7 from the NIV version. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver.
Art Rainer is the Vice President for Institutional Advancement at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. He holds a doctorate of business administration from Southeastern University and an MBA from the University of Kentucky. He writes widely about issues related to finance, wealth, and generosity, and is the author of The Money Challenge, 30 Days of Discovering God's Design for You and Your Money, The Marriage Challenge, a finance guide for married couples, and his latest book, Find More Money, Increase Your Income to Tackle Debt, Save Wisely, and Live Generously. Art lives in Wake Forest, North Carolina with his wife, Sarah, and their 3 children. Art, it's so great to have you back.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And Amy, I love that you clarified that verse is not just from my book, but it's actually from the Bible. Yeah, I don't want there to be any confusion there.
You didn't
it's the
just
financial
make that up.
pseudepigrapha, or whatever you call this.
There may be some people that notice that's not was not originally written by me.
So I did see that. I went to Amazon last night and was looking through the first pages of your book, and that verse, of course, was there. But I also saw it's all a lie with that Bible verse woven in there. So it's all a lie. That's a pretty bold way to start a book. So tell us about that concept and why you're telling us it's all a lie.
Well, first of all,
except for the Bible verse, right?
Exactly
no, the
right.
Bible verse is actually,
I was not saying that Bible verse is a lie, but what teenagers are hearing about money, what the world is teaching them about money, their finances, possessions, they're being duped. And in a very similar way that adults are being duped. They're being taught through social media, through other avenues that the more money that you have, the more happiness you will experience. They're being taught that possessions are a way to satisfy what you really long for. And that if you obtain a certain lifestyle, that if you're able to drive that certain car, maybe one day go on those vacations, then you're gonna be happy, that you're gonna be content. You're gonna be one of those people on social media that's smiling with all the things behind them, whether it's a nice house or a nice car, or maybe they're somewhere on a beach. Like that can be you, in that they're also being told that those pictures are real, that they're not a facade, that's something that's actually happening. Of course, we know that usually is just not the truth. I mean, you can look at financial statistics and just see that no, most of the time, most of the stuff that you see is propped up by debt, and it's a facade that's put there, and it's likely not bringing the amount of satisfaction, contentment that picture seems to reveal on social media. So they're being lied, they're being duped, and the Money Challenge for Teens unpacks all of that.
Yeah, and I've seen statistics. I mean, apart from the spiritual side of it, I've seen statistics before where, there's a X amount of income over which happiness is not attributed to it or even goes down, because you're just worried about, losing it, I guess, or keeping up with it, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, those that make over $200,000 or more, which is a good chunk of money, actually experience high levels of stress. The notorious Big, maybe some of you all know him. He was right when he said more money, more problems.
yeah.
And so that's absolutely right. There's a decline in satisfaction and happiness that happens with the more income that you have, because the greater stress that you have, because a lot of people, when they make that much, they want to make sure that they hold on to it,
Right.
because there's a lifestyle that they're trying to support.
Yeah.
And it's just
worry
more
that
to
comes
more to
with it.
manage, more responsibilities, more to lose.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
absolutely
and
right.
you've mentioned that when you do financial events with adults, that what you hear over and over is, "I wish I would have known this stuff earlier."
I can't
So
tell you.
is that why you're trying to talk to teens in this book? To get in on that early side.
There's absolutely there's two things that I hear over and over again. That's one of them, is that I wish I would have known this earlier. I cannot tell you how many times that have heard that. I wish I would have started saving earlier. I wish that I would have understood the importance of budgeting earlier. I wish that I would have understood that I was being lied to, that money equals happiness. Also, I am continuously hearing from parents that, man, I wish that I had something that I could teach my kids. I wish that there's a way that I can communicate these financial principles, and many of them have read the Money Challenge to their teenager. And so that's why the Money Challenge for teens was written, for really those two reasons. One, because I kept hearing people wish that would have started earlier, and two, they were telling me that they wanted a resource to be able to share with their teens, because the reality is that teenagers have an amazing opportunity right now. They have an amazing opportunity to actually get things right, and the decisions that they're making right now in high school can make a significant difference on down the road.
And you're starting down this path, but that's actually my next question. One of the quotes said, "Today's teens are faced with more financial opportunities and threats than ever before." So how so? How are their financial options different from us, their parents, or even their grandparents?
Yeah, well, they're able to generate income in various ways now. It's no longer just a job at McDonald's. There's more income earning opportunities out there through side gigs and through the internet. It's opened up a world of opportunities for us. Plus, they have the opportunity to make decisions about their retirement right now. So I know that sounds really weird, that they can start thinking about retirement during their high school years, but they really can. They can set up a Roth IRA and they can start putting money into it. And that little bit of money over that long period of time, assuming they retire at age 65, can make a massive, massive difference. And they're going to look back and say, wow, I'm so glad that my parents pointed this out to me, because had I not known that this was available to me, I would be in a different place entering retirement. And you can start developing these habits, these healthy financial habits right now with the income that God provides them.
And I'm not a numbers person, but you don't have to go very far with compound interest to convince me that you need an IRA or whatever as soon as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Running real numbers, and I put this in the Money Challenge for teens so that they can visually see the impact of their savings during high school. If they set aside, let's say $2,000 when they were 16, 17, and 18, so a total of $6,000 over 3 years, based on real numbers of the S&P 500, which is basically, let's just say, the stock market, based on real numbers of the stock market's performance over that period of time. They could turn that $6,000 to about $600,000 without adding a dime to that, because of compounding. It's a really powerful tool.
it's almost like Archimedes, right? You hear about, if you give me a place to stand and a lever long enough, I can move the world, and that lever is time with a teen. Yeah. So, well, that's wonderful. I think we're going to go ahead and take a short break before we're going to get into this next question, because I think this could be a little bit longer. And we'll be right back on the Bible for Kids with Art Rainer. Get swept away by God's awesome story with the Epic Bible. This graphic novel-style Bible features dramatic illustrations created by some of DC and Marvel's best comic book artists. Whether someone is reading the Bible for the first time or looking for a fresh perspective, the Epic Bible's cinematic storytelling will make God's Word come alive and reveal His redemptive plan for all humanity. Perfect for teens, comic book fans, and graphic novel readers. The Epic Bible, God's Story from Eden to Eternity. Available for pre-order wherever books are sold.
Imagine a world where children of every hue know they are equally created in the image of God. This, friends, is God's heart revealed in His Word. A quote from Dorena Williamson. In her beautifully illustrated book, Colorful, author Dorena Williamson tells the story of two best friends who are learning to celebrate their different skin colors. As they look around them at the amazing colors in nature, they can see that their skin is another example of God's creativity. This joyful story takes a new approach to discussing race. Instead of being colorblind, we can choose to celebrate each color God gave us and be colorful instead. This book includes a parent connection, an easy tool to help you discuss the book's message with your child. You can also visit www.bhkids.com for a free, colorful, downloadable activity journal to help you and your kids grow deeper in your faith and understanding of kingdom diversity. Colorful is available wherever books are sold.
Hey, Bible for Kids listeners, we're always looking for ways to give away free resources for you to use with your kids. So look us up on social media and find out what's going on our Instagram and Facebook page at The Bible for Kids.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast. We are speaking with Art Rainer today.
And so, Art, I want to talk about, you were talking about teens and their money. I want to talk about Art as a teen. So I believe in an earlier episode, you mentioned the great extent of your financial nerdiness yes. about how you handled money as a teenager. And I think that bears repeating in this episode. So tell us how you unknowingly have already set an example by handling your money responsibly as a teenager.
Yeah, I nerdiness is the right way to describe me, not just in money, but in general. I mean, just in life. But certainly in the area of finances. Yeah, when I was in high school, I started working. Age 15 is when I got my first "quote unquote" real job. When I actually get a paycheck. I was working at a go-kart track, and a lot of funny stories there, as you could imagine. But I was introduced by my parents to this concept, or to this idea of a Roth IRA, and so my dad specifically demonstrated the importance of saving in a Roth IRA. Now, I wish that I could say that I grasped everything that he was telling me in that moment, and the importance of it in that moment. But I did start to understand. Okay, this is a way that I can set aside money, that I can invest it and watch it grow. And so I did just that. I'm one of the weird ones that actually had a retirement account when I was in high school. And so when I write about it in the book, it's very real for me, because you can actually do it. I've experienced it. And if you can just start, like I did, start setting aside a little bit of money. It doesn't have to be much, but every time you get a paycheck, set aside, say, 15% of your gross income into that retirement account. Your teenager can really start developing not just a really good habit, but they can start setting aside significant dollars for their retirement. And in the money challenge for teens, I have a lot of good visuals in there to help teenagers understand the importance of doing these things. I even have a chapter on millionaires. I know that sounds weird, but what I wanted to do in that chapter was reveal what a real millionaire was. So it dispels kind of the myth of what a millionaire is. Most people, when they think millionaire, they think they got to make $1 million a year, which is just not true.
A top hat and a monocle.
That's right.
And a cane. Got to have a cane too.
That's right. You got to have a cane. You got to have a really nice car. Well, most millionaires don't have that stuff. Not only they don't have a top hat or a cane, but they don't have an incredibly nice car either. Because what a real millionaire is somebody with a net worth of $1 million. And for most quote unquote millionaires, that means that you have your house paid off and enough set aside for retirement. And so I dispel the myth of what it means to be a real millionaire, and also show that it's actually more attainable than you might think. It's something that you can actually do, and that there's people that are doing this all over the world, but you wouldn't know that they're millionaires just because of the way that they live their life. They don't have that facade that makes you think, okay, well, they must have a lot of money. And that's one of the reasons why they actually have a lot of money. They're not playing the game. They're not spending all their money on that facade. But I think it's also important to say that I'm talking about all these things for really one reason. I want them to understand God's design for money. Really, that's what this is all about. That God has a plan for their finances, that it's revealed in Scripture, that there's over 2,000 verses on money and finances, stewardship, possessions. And in that by doing this, you actually get the contentment, the satisfaction, the joy that comes from being generous, living generously. And so it's dispelling the myth. It's giving you guidance for a much more contentment-filled life, more contented way to manage your finances.
And the power of, back to the millionaire thing, the power of showing a teenager the reality of that, especially while, like, when you're a teenager, which is still a little unbelievable to me, but you're planning, you're creating a life plan, basically. You're deciding what you want to major in, what you want to do for the rest of your life, even as early as in high school. You know, kids are sometimes on vocational tracks or something where they're thinking about what they're doing for the rest of their lives. And so to present that millionaire concept to them, to pull back the curtain, show the reality of that, show what it means long-term, that has got to be such a powerful thing for a teenager to see. And so that said, we talked about you being a financial nerd as early as a teenager. Did 16-year-old Art know that you were going to write about financial issues? Did you even dream that would be part of it? Or did you just love financial stuff and just, immerse yourself in it? When did you start writing professionally about financial issues?
So when I graduated from college, to answer your question about high school, no, that was not my ultimate goal. When I graduated from college, I dove into the banking world to become a CFP, so a certified financial planner. And my hope was that I would one day just simply be able to help people with their finances, because it developed an extreme interest in it. And I realized that, okay, I understand this at maybe a different level, just because of the things that I'd learned up until that point. And so I simply wanted to help people with their finances. And so I dove into the banking world and get my MBA, and then also my DBA, so Doctorate of Business Administration. And then God called me out of that. He just made me become unsettled in that career path. I didn't know what God had in store for me after that, but I knew that this just wasn't it. And I received a phone call from a pastor whose church was in a financial mess, and asked me if I would be willing to come on staff. And it was a light bulb moment for me. If you want to use the term calling, you could. I knew that this was what God had in store for me. And so I jumped on full time with the church and helped them with their finances. But that desire for to help people with their finances never went away. And so I started really writing about it. I believe it was in 2013. And since then I've written 7 books on personal finances that range all the way from kids books to adult financial books. And so I've been writing now for probably about 7 years. And there have been about 7 books that have been written.
So I'm not great at math, but that's a book a year. That's a lot for a big, thick, financial book.
Well, the great thing is that I don't write big financial books because I know that most people, because the people that I tend to work with and help with their finances, they're just that average Joe, and they're trying to figure out some of the basics, and so the books that I write are geared toward that person, and specifically for the Money Challenge for Teens, it's written in a way that teenagers can understand, that they can grasp these financial concepts. And within the Money Challenge for Teens, there's also a fictional story that is woven throughout the book, so that as your teenager is reading this book, they're not just reading a bunch of concepts. They'll learn concepts, but they're also reading a fictional story that moves them from chapter to chapter, because I recognize that the vast majority of people have no interest in reading a book on finances. Once again, I'm a nerd. I will read a book from cover to cover on finances. The vast majority of people will not. And so I recognize that. And so that's why that story is put into there, to help them move from chapter to chapter, and ultimately finish the book. But once again, they're not really big books. I try to keep them as concise as possible.
Hmm. So, yeah, Amy's like, thank you. You touched on this maybe a little bit, but can you maybe point at what is one of the biggest misunderstandings you've seen with teens and money?
Yes, the biggest misunderstanding for teens, it really has to do with the area of generosity. They do not see that as the priority, oftentimes because they have not been taught that what the Bible says is that we're to make giving a priority, that we're to give proportionally, sacrificially, and as the Bible verse at the beginning says, cheerfully. And so they're not taught these principles and the importance of them, that this is God's design for money. This is our starting place when it comes to finances. And so that's the biggest misunderstanding that I see, is that when they get a paycheck, they just go and they just spend it. They buy a pair of shoes. They save up for the car, and those aren't bad things in and of themselves, but they skip the most important part, and that's being generous with their finances.
Yeah, and that points to whose money is really, and who we count on, for our daily bread. And if we don't see that as our money, but part of how God is providing for us, that's a different shift of mindset to who that belongs to.
Without question.
And it just, as you were speaking, reminded me of the fishes and loaves story. That was a child who presented his lunch just in faith. I don't know that he maybe presented his lunch thinking I'm going to starve if I don't get my lunch. But, he presented his lunch in faith, and God was really able to multiply that when he gave.
Yeah, look what God did with it. I mean, that's such a powerful lesson right there. Even when you feel like you can financially or numerically give little, God can take that little and do amazing, amazing things with it.
I think that's a good place for a break. I think we're right at break time. So why don't we go ahead and take a short break, and we'll be right back on the Bible for Kids. Give generously, save wisely, live appropriately. Don't you wish you knew how to handle and manage your money better when you were a teenager? Do you want to provide the teens in your life with a tool to help them better prepare for the future? In the Money Challenge for Teens, author Art Rayner introduces readers to some fictional young friends who are navigating financial waters and learning how God would want them to face college choices and car loans and thoughts about retirement. Yes, even as a teenager. While reading about the fictional friends' steps and missteps, readers will learn simple, practical lessons and adopt real-life goals to start their journey to a healthy and godly financial future. And check out Art's other titles as well: The Money Challenge, The Marriage Challenge, and Find More Money, all available everywhere books are sold.
We are so excited about The Marvelous Maker, the brand new book from April Graney, coming out in September. Check it out.
The beginning was good. All was as it should be for Adamus and Genevieve, until dark desire filled their eyes, and they gave in to the tricky tempter's lies. But the Maker heard their cries and humbly took on flesh, vowing to the tempter, "I'm not finished with you yet." Creation, fall, redemption, redemption and the hope of final restoration. The Marvelous Maker by April Graney, available everywhere books are sold.
Okay, favorite listeners, we are always giving something away. Free books, yay! So to win, check out our instructions on Instagram and Facebook at The Bible for Kids. And just look for the Bible for Kids podcast at Google or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
We're back on the Bible for Kids, speaking with Art Rayner.
So Art, for non-financial nerds like myself, this sort of intentional financial planning, like actually thinking long-term about where your money goes, that takes place once you're out of college or married. So why is it so important that teens pay attention to this now and start managing their finances now?
Oh, they have this amazing, amazing opportunity called time. And if you talk to any current retiree, soon to be retired person, what do they wish that they had more of financially? Time. They wish that they had more time to save. And so they have the chance to actually get things right. They have the chance to, we've already talked about compounding, so they have the chance to take full advantage of that. But they also have the chance to start developing biblically wise financial habits now. So they start by just developing the simple pattern of how they manage their finances. You give first, give generously, and you save wisely, and then you live appropriately, making sure that you're managing your finances or spending your money within a budget. And in the money challenge for teens, I provide 8 money milestones for teens. So if you've read the money challenge, then you're familiar with the 8 money milestones. Well, I do the same thing in the money challenge for teens, but they're all geared toward teenagers, things that they can actually do now. So opening up a checking account, opening up a savings account, setting aside $500, doing those things that are very doable for them right now. And what they're really doing is they're building their financial foundation that will benefit them for many, many years to come. And they can start making really good financial decisions now. I mean, they're about to go into college if they choose to, if that's the path that they want to take. And there's some really big and consequential decisions that they're going to have to make as it relates to the type of school that they go to, the cost of the school, what major are they going to they're going to do, and that's also addressed in the money challenge for teens. So they have the opportunity right now to get those things right, and not be a retiree that's looking back on us and saying, "Man, I wish I had more time," or a recent college grad with tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt and said, "Wow, I wish I would have done that a little bit differently."
Yeah. And, Amy and I both have teens. And so we've teed up a couple of questions about our own kids here. And, and actually, talking to you, I do have another question in mind ultimately, but this just kind of came up because I'm sitting here on my desk and I looked over and my daughter just graduated from college, and part of her packet was a little booklet that says Life After College Explained. I'll hold it up on our Zoom screen so you can see it. What I thought that was so fascinating, yeah, what I thought was so fascinating about this is, okay, here she's a college graduate. She's not in finance, but, environmental science is what she has her degree in, but yet, she doesn't know about, mortgages or credit cards or any of those things. And so I just thought that was fascinating. You can think of, you'd expect, okay, you got a college graduate, they're ready to go out into the world, get a job and go. But you forget that there's just so much left to learn, even at that young age. So that maybe that's just a comment. And my actual question has to do with credit cards. So my daughter just graduated. I have a son who's a sophomore in college, but my daughter in particular, and I'm sure they'll start showing up soon, is just getting all these credit card offers in the mail. And so far she hasn't signed up for one. And, personally, I've just been saying, look, I don't think it's good to have one of these until you have an income, you're a full-time student, that sort of thing. So and you'll be paying 20% to the bank when they're going to just be paying you 1%. So can you talk a little bit? I know there's the issue of building up your credit, but can you talk about credit cards for teens and kind of that whole trap?
All right, well, let me back up even further than that on just the topic of credit cards. And I know I'm going to get some people really upset by saying this. I can hear Dave Ramsey right now just chewing me out. I am not anti-credit card. I am anti-credit card debt. Let me be very clear with that. I'm anti-credit card debt. It is it's a scam. I mean, it is an absolute terrible thing to get into, as you mentioned, because you're talking about 20%, maybe even more in interest. And so they can create havoc on your finances. But I'm not anti-credit cards as long as they're used wisely. Now, regarding your teenager, though, that's a different question. So there's a couple of things that you said. One, are they making an income? If they're not making an income, like if they're not going to be able to pay their bill, they shouldn't have a credit card. To me, that would be a no-brainer.
Can you even get a credit card do they ask you about your income?
Not for college kids. They just send you the
I
things.
Remember back in the olden days when I went to college, even then they had the table set up with the free t-shirts, and you could get a free t-shirt and all you had to do was fill out this short application. And I'm sorry to say I got a free t-shirt. But they just make it so enticing. Look at this cool water bottle that we'll give you, and all you got to do is fill this out. So yeah, they encourage you to sign up for them, which should be a red flag right there.
Yeah, they're very aggressive on college campuses about trying to hook you in early. And of course, they make money off of that their hope is that you'll get debt, right? Because then that's where they really make the big chunk of change. And statistically speaking, they're probably right. And when a college student gets that credit card, they tend to rack up a bunch of debt because they really don't understand credit cards and how they work. So back to the teenager question, if you're going to provide a credit card, or when that time comes, there has to be a significant amount of education to help them understand exactly what this tool is and how to properly use it, and the significant downside of these things when you keep a balance on them, that you're going to end up paying significantly more for that dress or for that couch or whatever the purchase is than you ever would have wanted to. So I'm not anti-credit card in general, but I would say approach with caution and make sure that there's a lot of education on the front end before saying yes, it's okay to get one.
And so, as Mike mentioned, I also have a teenager. I have a 16-year-old boy just right in the other room, Ethan. So if you were to give him one piece of financial advice, if you had him for 5 minutes and we're only going to be able to give him one piece of financial advice, what would it be?
I'd have to go back to the foundation of finances, that generosity is the foundation of your finances. And the Bible says in 1 Timothy, that when you are generous, you're able to take hold of that which is life. Now, it's not talking about eternal life. Generosity obviously does not get us into heaven, but the benefits of satisfaction, contentment, joy, those things you're able to take hold of if you are generous. And paradoxically, so you take hold of them by basically letting go. Can I add another one? I know you said one, but another one that I would add to that. Yeah, you're asking a financial nerd to say, okay, just one thing. That's really difficult for me to do. I would start showing him the financial statistics that are out there about debt, about car loans, about all these things, because my goal would be to put a different lens on him through which he sees the financial world. So that when he looks at a really nice car and he starts to think, man, I wish that I could drive. I wish I could be like them. He sees something else. He sees, man, that car, it's probably actually not even owned by that person, not only through debt, but it's probably going to be leased. And that's a really bad path, because he's going to have to return that car in 3 years, and he's not going to own anything. And then he's going to have to either he's going to have to get a loan, or he's going to have to start another lease. And he's just in this downward cycle. And so when you start looking at financial statistics, I mean, we're at an all-time high with consumer debt right now. When you start seeing things through that lens, then it really changes. You no longer desire those cars nearly as much, because they represent something different. You no longer desire that massive house, because once again, it represents something different to you. And so I would encourage him to start studying reality, basically, so that when he looks at the world around him, he sees through the facade.
I think that's such a good tip too, because our kids are so inundated with social media and filters and, things like that. So I feel like that perception, is such an important thing to give our kids. And you talked about generosity too. We have been good about teaching him to save. He's a natural saver anyway. My first son, not so much. He takes after me, but the second one is a financial nerd, a saver, won't spend any money. And so he gets that part of it. But the generosity thing, we had an incident just the other day, and I won't go into the whole story, but he wanted to give $20. And we were like, oh, no, we'll do that. We'll give our $20, keep your money. And then he said, no, but Mom, it feels better if it comes from me. And I thought, duh, like, why would I rob him of that opportunity to be generous at that time? So really, we need to focus, as our family specifically needs to focus more on the generosity side. I feel like he's got the saving side of things, but just really focusing on the generosity and letting him participate in the generosity. I feel like we modeled that, but letting him participate in it, we haven't been as, successful in.
Yeah, that's good. Showing them that when you're generous, don't hide it from them. Let it be something that you talk, because the era of passing money in the offering plate at church has gone away. You're probably giving online like we do. So talk about it. Let them know that you're doing it, so they can see you leading the way, and then giving them the opportunity to participate. Both of those are great ideas.
Well, I think we have time for one more question. You probably have addressed this already, but okay. So I'm a teen. Why should I pick up the money challenge for teens?
Well, so many teens are
and by the way, I'm not a teen. I'm just making believe I'm a teen.
We thought you were.
Yeah. My voice has changed.
There's often if you're a parent and you're thinking, man, my child, I really want them to read this. I think that this could be good for them. I'm going to, of course, be biased and say, yeah, I think it really could be good for them as well. You may have to encourage them a little bit, right? So I've already seen it with this book, where you have some parents that say, hey, if you finish this book, I will give you X number of dollars to put toward a savings account to help them get started. So they may need to encourage them. Why would a teenager desire to pick it up? Well, because money is going to be a significant part of their life from here on out, and there's no way around it. They're already starting to deal with it. And if you ask most teenagers, do you want to be in a ton of debt? Do you want to be stressed out, anxious, arguing with your future spouse constantly about finances? Or do you want to be financially healthy? Do you want to experience what God has for you in this area? Do you want to experience contentment, satisfaction with your finances and with your possessions? Most of them would say yes. And the great thing about what I do is I'm not smart enough to make all this stuff up on my own. I just look at the Bible and just see what God has to say about it, and just kind of flesh it out from there, how it applies to us in our day and age, and how it applies to teenagers in their day and age. And so that's I would say that most teenagers innately want to do well in this area. They're just not really sure where to start.
Yeah, I think that's, we're so good about teaching our kids, the concepts of the Bible, but, when it comes to financial situations, I don't know that that's the first thing you think about, the first tool that you think of going to. So thank you for taking all of those concepts from the Bible, putting them into a book that we as adults can understand, that our kids can understand, and just, Art, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, it's always a pleasure. It's great talking to you all.
Listeners, we are giving away a copy of Art's book, Money Challenge for Teens. So to learn how to win a copy, just follow us over on Instagram or Facebook at The Bible for Kids, or on our website at thebibleforkids.com.
Art, great having you. Thank you once again. And until next time, thank you for joining us on The Bible for Kids.
Thanks for listening to the Bible for Kids podcast with Amy Parker and Mike Noraki. Be sure to connect with the Bible for Kids on Instagram and Facebook, and at thebibleforkids.com. We'd love to hear your comments and ideas for future podcasts. You can email us, info@thebibleforkids.com. The Bible for Kids podcast is part of the Way Nation Podcast Network. Find more podcasts at waynation.com.